Welcome to J&J's Retro and Repairs. Hello everyone. What I have with me today is a Nintendo Switch Lite. It has a problem with detecting when the left joystick control is pressed. Mostly up, but it's pretty much, a problem everywhere. And the problem seems to be very common failure mode on these particular devices. So not uncommon for these to fail. And right now it's gotten to the point where it doesn't even work anymore. So due to the fact that the controller on the Switch Lite is built in, I have to open it up in order to actually take out the control in order to actually replace it. That's the only way I can access the controller module. So right now, I already looked into the possibility of opening the joystick module itself to fix it, but on all the sites I went to, they basically said that if you open it up, good luck putting it back together again. And the replacement parts are so affordable, so just getting new joystick modules is actually the cheaper option. So today, the plan is to replace the left joystick, and I have a new module to replace it with. I already went ahead and made the purchase and already got the modules to replace it with. So I got it from Amazon. The links will be at the bottom for you to get one yourself. I believe they're still available at this point. So hopefully they're still available when you actually watch this video. They're very good from what I can tell, and they had really good reviews. So I guess we'll find out exactly how well they'll really work in the end. I did find the original item, and you'll have a link for that. And so hopefully you'll be able to fix your own Switch Lite yourself. This is the aim of these videos as a DIY, so hopefully you can fix your own equipment. I hope that everything I do here is helpful to everyone out there. If you have any suggestions or anything you want to, to suggest to me, or any better options for different things I'm doing, feel free to put your suggestions down below, and I'll very much enjoy that. So let's get started. Before we start, I have to apologize for the quality of the video of the disassembly and some of the repair. I did find out towards the middle point when I was about to reassemble that apparently the camera was lagging because the acceleration was not turned on, and so it wasn't recording very well for the first half of the video. And so I apologize for any of the issues that were created, the lagginess of that initial video. I will do my best to try and work that out and make it less unbearable and fill in the parts that didn't work out. Let me know if you have any trouble with this video, and please let me know if you'd like me to make a re-record of the disassembly down below. Thank you. So as mentioned earlier, actually we will be working with this Nintendo Switch Lite. We need to repair it because this controller does not work anymore, unfortunately. So the best thing that we can do is open it up based on some instructions that I found online and take out the controller and replace it with a new one. I have a new one under the desk here. Here we are. So let's have a look at this first of all. I have actually looked into this before, but this particular one, it gives us a tool. Some tweezer tools for grabbing small things. Kind of nice to have. Definitely use that. We also get screwdriver tools, even though technically I already have some screwdriver tools, but it's nice that the kit includes them. It includes a tool for separating the case, which can be very useful. I mean, you will need to use this to separate the case effectively without damaging it. Plastic is preferred. I do have a metal one, but it is likely that would damage the case. And a secondary tool, because there's actually two separate types of screws in this particular device. Quite a few of the screws are actually a Phillips type, The other one is this tri-wing, they call it, type, where it actually has three prongs instead of four like Phillips. Then there is the cute buttons that you can add onto the top that comes as a bonus with the kit, as well as, not least, the actual controller itself that we will be replacing. There's also a few other things in here as well, and there's, you know, various tools for that you can use for different things, different purposes for removing and replacing, as well as extra buttons for cute colors if you really want it. Quite likely I will cut out some of this process, since unscrewing the back case is not the most pleasant experience, but we'll speed this up probably. I actually purchased this particular screwdriver when I needed to work on another Nintendo device, the Wii that we have. It is actually very common to see this in any of the Nintendo devices that they make. But ironically, they do not use it everywhere. Good example would be on the tops and the bottoms. They use a standard Phillips for those ones. So we can now use our separating tool. What you want to do here is you want to start at, say, a spot like the speaker, the very thin flat end, and try to pry without going too deeply. Pry a little bit to the side like this. Make sure you use a tool that you can use to get inside here and get all the clips out. There it goes. It popped now. Go. Once you have the back off, it should come off nice and easy. Stop. And there you go. Back is off now. Now, before I go any deeper, I'm going to put my static strap on because I'll be touching some possibly sensitive components now. Let's get these parts to the side. Now the point is that we need to remove this shield plate. This needs to come off. There are quite a few screws on this plate. You don't want to lose any of them. So right now, I am going to take a quick break, get myself something to contain all the screws in the proper. This will help me to take control over what it is that I'm actually doing, so that when I put the screws away, I know I can do it in reverse order and get it all back. So I'm going to be putting the screws in order, so that when I reverse, I will be able to undo. That is all that was holding that on. And now we are down to accessing the battery and RAM joystick port. Before we can get any deeper, because the actual joystick we need to gain access to is the left one. This is upside down, so the left one is on this side. So we need access underneath that battery and underneath all of this to be able to remove and replace that left joystick. Not an easy thing to do, but I'm following instructions right now, and I will also post where I received the instructions from in case someone else would like to follow it as well. When we get further to the end of this, I will need to clean off the thermal compound and replace it with a new thermal compound. We reassemble this because I have now broken the thermal compound contact with the case. So that needs to be fixed before we close it back up. Next to the battery. Don't want to continue doing any more work here until we have unlatched the battery. The battery contact is gone. Everything is powered down. Now, before I started this, I already powered it down physically from inside the Switch using its software. However, in the process, I didn't know whether we may have accidentally powered it up, but we don't want to accidentally power it up while we're working on it. So removing the battery is an important step. Moving along, we will also need to remove this contact as well, since this whole corner side will need to come up. Next, we are going to need to use our tweezers. We will need to remove some of the contacts gently, without doing what I just did. Actually break the wire. These wires are very sensitive, so be very, very gentle when you're doing it. When you are outnumbered, magnify. And that means that piece is off. Now, we need access to some of these other pieces as well. Probably won't need the magnifier for that part. Doesn't hurt to have it times when you need it. Now we need to remove these screws. Next set of screws. And what we're doing now is we're taking the screws out of the speaker module. Now we want to remove the interconnect, which is right here. Do that. Pop this holder and remove the cable gently. Next, we are going to have to take off some of the connectors for joysticks. You have to be very gentle when you remove these. They're highly at risk of being damaged and torn. You have to be very gentle when you remove those. We remove the volume control. Now for the joystick cable. Joystick cable is this one. Moved in a similar fashion to the rest of these cables. Make sure you have a grip on the whole cable if you can. If you only grip part of the cable, there's a high likelihood you might tear it. It needs to have a good grip on the cable to pull it out in a way that's safe. In some ways, it's actually harder to replace the cable than to actually remove it. So, yeah, fun part would be putting it back. And now we're going to take away the corner button because it needs to come out next. I'll make sure I have the right size screwdriver for this. Yeah. We have to remove the corner button because the corner button is actually holding the daughter board down. And we need to take that whole daughter board out if we intend to exchange the controller. It really was only those two screws. Oh, but I can't lose the spring. Spring is important. And that is holding this down. Sure to be gentle when you're pulling this up. Switch the cables. Still be hanging about. Now the daughter board is removed. The only thing on this daughter board is the controller pads and the contacts. This module. Now we've exposed the module, and we now have access to be able to replace the module directly. And all we need to do is take out these two screws, and we will have full access to replace the module with a new one. Isn't that exciting? So, the final step, last two screws. Now, I considered replacing both these controllers. I have the ability to do so. In fact, I even have two of these kits in case that one wasn't enough. I decided that one is probably enough. What I need. So, as you can see, once you take it up, that's it. It's the whole thing right there. Whole joystick module right there. And you see, if you notice, the joystick module was the one that connected on the side, right here. And that's the one we're going to replace. Ultimately, that's the one that will be going. So I'm going to put that aside. You know that that was a partially working module, but it's really, really broken. This should be a working module. Now make sure when you reinsert it that the cable is facing down. The way that this hooks on to the way that this hooks onto this, it needs to go in here. It needs to fit into that module. So it has to be oriented exactly this way. So now we just reverse everything we just did, start putting things back together again. So now we can reassemble. When you're putting the screws back in, always remember, turn to the left first until it clicks and then turn back. What that will do is it'll prevent you from stripping any of the plastic threads that are in the case and helps you put it back together properly. There's also two tricky parts about reassembling this, by the way. The one tricky part about reassembling it is getting all of the cables back in where they belong. It's not as easy to get them in as it is to get them out. The other thing that is tricky is getting the spring set up for the corner switch. That is a complicated matter. It does take a little bit of patience to get it right. So you will probably find yourself having a fun time with that. That's now secured in there. So once it's secured, now we can move along and to the next step, which is putting this back in place. Easiest way is always to slide it to the left and let it drop into place. You'll find it'll work good that way. However, do note, as I'm showing you here, that you do need to thread this up. So, using the tweezers, gently pry this up out of the way that it can be accessed when the board is reassembled. So getting access to this, bending it just ever so slightly, that when it goes down, it's routed. See what happened there? Flipped right into the right place, just like that. Just like that. That's what you want when you're reassembling. Take a quick break here and I'll be right back. Back recording again. And it is time for us to continue putting this back together again. Now, back to where we left off. We just got the joystick replaced and the daughter board is now in place. Now I just need to put the screws back in for this piece. By putting the screws back in, it will help us to make sure that the digital joystick is making proper contact. Now that it's all together, this is where the fun begins. This particular piece actually goes in here. However, along with that, it also has a spot for the hooks. Spring goes in. So as part of replacing this, spring actually needs to fit in here. Little prong in the middle. Not sure if you can see that. Little prong in the middle where the spring goes onto. Now, it has to fit right onto that little prong. Really fun little experiment. Well, it would seem that the spring went flying, and I will check the recording later to find out probably where it may have went. But I'm going to guess that I won't see that spring again. I looked everywhere and I could not find it. So I have ordered a replacement spring and other various accessories for this device, and we will continue this another day. Continuing where we left off, I needed parts for the spring that I lost, so I purchased this. It's a parts replacement, screws, parts, springs, everything pretty much. Acquired it off of eBay. No, sorry, not eBay. Off of Amazon, actually. Pretty easy to find, not hard to get. Pretty cheap. I think it was like $10, so it's not too bad. Canadian dollars, that is. Not too bad for what you get. And of course, I needed out of it mostly was the springs. Although you can get a lot more, you get a lot more, all the screws that you could possibly be missing. We are missing one screw. I didn't get a chance to show this before, but one of the parts, one of the plastic pieces that had fallen out of the Switch actually belongs right here. It's actually one of the screw mounts. You can see that it actually doesn't look like this screw mount at all. The two of them look different because this one, the top actually broke off. So at some point, I'm guessing through wear or tear, it must have broken, and inside plastic was probably rattling around inside for a long time. And when I opened it up, it fell out, and there's a little plastic piece. I lost that as well, but I assume I probably could have glued it back on. However, I doubt any screw would have gone back in there anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that, and I probably won't bother trying to fix the problem. However, I do now, thanks to this, have a spring that I lost. It should help me to reattach the spring right where it belongs. There it is. It is now inside the little gap. Next step is to reassemble and put this switch back on. I'm going to make sure we keep the carbon contacts in its proper place, right here. That goes down. The way it works is, as you push the button, it pushes down contact, which contacts this part right here. So this pushes down and touches those metal contacts. So I need to put this down into place right here. The corner switch covered, and the corner is in place. So now we need the screws to reassemble that piece, which are these ones. Now we'll want to reattach the joystick assembly, which is right here. This is a new joystick assembly cord cable that from the new joystick we just installed. We'll get it back into its little hole right there. Once it's in place, yeah, it's not quite in place yet. Once it's in place, you can flip the little switch back down and close the connection. Tighten it up. It needs to go into this little gap right inside. Just might need to tip it up just so you can see clearly where it needs to go. There's just a little gap in connector entry right here that it needs to go into. And these are not exactly easy to put in, so it may take a little bit of trial and error before it finally goes in. Ah, there we go. You'll know it went in properly because it will make a very satisfying slip and stop. At which point you can lock this down. Next, you want to be reinstalling the corner button. Took this out, you put it away, but it's back where it belongs now. Make sure you feed the cable properly. It will feed right over top beside the corner button. You can see where it goes through this little hook. I don't need to make sure the lock mechanisms are up fully and put it in. Sorry, this is the volume control buttons I meant. This particular button is a little bit harder to install because it's kind of on a funny angle. So you have to work a little bit harder to get this one in. And you might want to turn it to get a better angle. These little retention switches basically put pressure to lock in the cable. So if the cable is in properly, and these are down, it should not easily be removed. And then you know it's in tight. Finally, let's get the main piece in place. Now, I temporarily put the sound module back in place here. I'm going to remove it again. It was temporary because I needed to keep everything in place so I didn't lose any parts, and the sound module was too large to fit my container. Put this cable back in place, and then I can close this down. And with that locked down, this cable should not easily remove now. It is in place and it is ready to go. All right. When we left off, I had just finishing putting back this cable that helps connect the main system to the control module board. So now this is connected back into the main system. Now the next step after we do this is to make sure that we get the sound module reinstalled. So this needs to go back in properly. It basically hooks in where this little notch here actually hooks under this this flex cable. So make sure you get it under that. Put the sound module quite securely in place, but make sure that you fit it down inside that little notch. There's a little notch right here. You need to fit the sound module down inside that. Now we can screw the module back down using the screws that we stored in here. So now that module is in place. All right. Now that the sound module is properly seated, we do need to get this little piece, this little connector back in place again. You can use tweezers if that works for you. Grab the sides and try to work it around and down into its little connector right there. You need to coax it a little. It's after sitting out for so long, it may end up being a little bit persnickety. Once you get it in there, you can just push it down and it should give you a little click. A feel of a little click in there, and then you know it's nice and snug. Now, the sound module's in place. The main board is reconnected to the controller, and we're ready now to move to the final phase. Now we're ready to reconnect the battery. So, making sure, of course, that the battery connector is released, we can use our handy dandy. There we go. Push that in place. Here I'm trying to be careful as well because we're connecting a battery lead. I don't want to short any of the connections on the battery leads if I can avoid it, because this is live. This battery is still active, and we do not want to mess with the battery connections as much as possible. There, the battery is now connected. So there is now power on this board, and it is live. So be careful from here on that you don't short anything that you're working on. That being said, I probably should have did this previous step before reconnecting the battery, because I need to clean off this thermal paste here. Do you see this paste? This paste is not ideal for what we're trying to accomplish here. Often you can use any alcohol-based solvent or anything of that sort to absorb and take that off. We also need to do the same thing for the shielding. The shielding is covered in basically thermal paste goop, and in order to get that off, we need something. We need isopropyl alcohol. And I wouldn't recommend using a spray on an open device, especially when the battery is connected. So if you're going to do this, you should get your hands on a clean wipe cloth or paper towel or something like that. Make sure the paper towel is wetted down before. Make sure the paper towel is wetted down before you actually wipe. One of the things about paper towel is it's very abrasive, and static electricity often tries to, will collect on it. So if you spray it down with alcohol first, you not only dissipate a lot of the static electricity that could develop because of the paper towel, but you also wet it down so then the fibers become denser and it causes it to not be as abrasive. So there are actually a couple different ways of doing this. I always like to start with paper towel first, because paper towel, you have a lot of it, and it's easier to wet down some paper towel first and then use that as a way to wipe down the item that you're trying to wipe. That, you don't want it too wet. You don't want to short anything. At the same rate, You do want to try and get as much off as you can so that there's not as much goop to worry about. Like this is just garbage. Look at this. Look at that. That's just, it's so hard and chunky. I can't imagine that's actually doing anything anymore. Well, it's not ideal by any means. That's not perfect, but that is good enough. I do want to get a little bit more off this, though. You can see that even this, like, it chunked right off here. That's not cool. Not cool at all. Now, it kind of looks like... Let's see if this is actually part of the setup here or not. Trying to be careful because I don't want to short anything, but I kind of suspect this might be connected to... Oh no, it's actually underneath. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that one. But we did pick up some Noctura thermal grease. This thermal paste is very good, probably some of the better kind that you can get your hands on. And it is actually very nice. You want to put a little dab on this area. You don't want too much. The stuff spreads like crazy. So just enough to make good contact with the lid and to transfer that heat from the heat pipe into your outer shell. And yeah. In the process of reassembling the shielding, I made sure to add in the thermal grease here. So what we need to do now is put this back where it belongs. See, the thermal grease will come into contact with the outer shielding right here, and the outer shielding will transfer the heat out. So the key here is to try and put it down as gently and correctly as possible, ensuring that the shielding goes and makes good contact in all places and where it needs to make contact, which is mostly right here. That's where the contact needs to really happen. This will transfer the heat out, and the fan will help to drive all the heat away from the heatsink as well by pulling it through. So this is kind of like the way that this thing works, is by transferring the heat around it as quickly as possible. First thing first, there is the very long screw that needs to go in. There we go. That should keep it down nice and tight. Now I'll just need to put all the rest of the screws into place for the shielding. These are smaller screws. Quite obvious that this shielding is a bit bent out of shape here. Not quite sure why. Now, I'm not entirely sure if you noticed this, but there is actually a broken piece right there. You can see how this piece is actually correct, full length, and there's a screw hole there. This is for holding the outer case on, but unfortunately this one has broken off, and the piece for that is right here. So ideally it would be nice if I could glue that back on, but I'm not too sure that it would be that easy for me to do at this point. If I tried gluing that back on, which I could do, And I do have extra screws I could put in there. I'm pretty sure that this would not stay. It would probably break off again inside the device. So for this, I'm just going to say, too bad, so sad. It goes in the parts bin. I'll probably transfer it to my dead parts bin later. So, but this one we'll just have to do with one screw less, and I'm pretty sure that it won't make that much difference. It's the only thing that this is supposed to do is help to keep the case nice and snug for the USB charging port, and it's not really that big of a deal. It just means that there might be a little bit more play in this area in the case. So now I guess it's time for us to reassemble this thing. I think I'll forego putting the case screws in until I verify everything's working. I don't think there's any pressure points on this particular setup. So I don't think there's any concern about losing, like not being having it boot up even with the back case not on. But in order to make sure that we actually get a full experience and make it easier for me to actually do this, I'm going to put the case fully back on because it'll be a lot harder if I don't. While you're doing this, the thing you have to watch out for is making sure that the volume control slips down properly over top on the top of the case. This is the hard part, making it fit underneath all of this, getting it to go under those corner pieces like that. Making sure that when you put it down, that slips properly over top of all the parts there. And goes down nice and tight. And there you go. Now, make sure it's nice and snap tight. You should automatically slip together quite nice and tightly. This is where we normally would screw it back together again, but you can, it clips together so nicely, you can test it before you actually put the screws back in the back. You don't need to put all these screws in before you actually do the tests. So now, let's see. Let's get some power. That was less interesting than I anticipated. That was actually quite disappointing, actually. I was expecting to get some power, but maybe it needs a boost. Let's see if it needs some power at the bottom. Let's give it some power and see what it does. Well, it seems that the fix is not done yet. I will have to reopen it and see what went wrong. It turns out that the switch will not turn on, and I quite suspect it's this control. I had suspected when I was trying to put this control in, when I was trying to put the wire in for this control, that it didn't seem like it was going in properly. And I have a suspicion it didn't go in properly. So I'm going to reopen this and try again. Again, we'll need to pry open the case, starting from around the speaker port and moving along in both directions. It should just pop off nicely. There we go. So, I suspect, my little suspicion is this is the culprit right here. I don't think that that is properly in there and connected right. So, the last time we had disconnected everything. The point is that the idea is you don't want the electricity to be going through the parts and this to be live when you are running, starting, trying to move connections, disconnect and reconnect things, pull things off the board. And you don't want to risk the possibility that you might drop a screw and poof, you've just put power where it should not go. So it is not a concern so much for this particular piece that we're working on right now. So in this particular case, what I would do, because we're not too concerned about that situation, we can simply disconnect the connection here, lift that up. More than likely with something that's easier to do it with. It is quite possible that the speaker is resisting my lifting that connection. In which case we have to go through the whole process all over again. Let us take all of the screws out, one by one. I was hoping to avoid taking the shielding off, since it's not the best if I have to take the shielding off each and every time. All right, I guess we're taking this off again. So it shouldn't be too hard to remove. I mean, it's already been off once. So taking this off more than once is usually not a big deal. Some cases they recommend using a spudger to remove it. I mean, you can do that. It isn't required. Usually it doesn't hold on so tightly. But see, that's already loose. And I forgot one screw, and that's why it's so difficult. And there we are. Now I should be able to just take it off. There. Now you can see that the thermal paste that I put down there actually worked very effectively. You'll notice how it's spread out. You see how much I put on there? It didn't seem like a lot, but that's all you need. And then it spreads out on its own. I may need to apply just a little dab more now that I've disconnected again, because now we've broken that initial join, but this is still fresh, so I won't have to reapply it completely. Just a little dab to add to the existing solder that's already there. Now my suspicion is this board was not doing its job, because this is probably not connected properly like I thought it was. Before I touch anything there, I will want this disconnected again. I don't want this power cable connected if I am manipulating wires. This connects the battery to the main board. With that disconnected, there's no more power on the main board anymore, so anything I do now is pretty safe. Risk cases, maybe some capacitors, but usually they drain out pretty quickly once you pull the battery off. What I'm concerned about is I don't think this connection is correct. It's also possible this one's wrong too. They both aren't in correctly, but I quite suspect this one is definitely not in the slot properly, like I had hoped it was. And so I think we will retry. remove and replace these again. Let's see. Yeah, see, that was way too easy to pull out. Pretty sure that wasn't in there, right? No, not noticing any. The other concern would be if there's some bulging on the battery. That would be a concerning thing too, but I don't see any concerning bulging, so that's a good sign. Now let's try and reconnect this battery. This is still connected as far as I can tell. It didn't actually pop up. And here it's kind of important to make sure it goes in all the way snugly. These battery cables, there we go. Make sure it's nice and tight and all the connections are in place. Now we can maybe test it. And look at that. What do you know? Power. Just like that. So that really was the problem. There was a bad connection in that power switch. Now it is back together again. I better power it down before I put all the other pieces in place. So let's fix that right now. Okay, now let's put this back in place. I'll need to hold the power down until it pops up with a power off option. I'll need the power off option. There it is. So, power options, turn off. You can see that the controller that I replaced it with is actually working, which is a very good sign. The fact that the power is working means that this module is definitely connected properly now. Battery is in properly. Now let's reattach the back of the case again, and I'm going to put just a dab, a very small dab of more of the Noctura. Not too much because there's already a lot on there. So we just want enough to reestablish that soft connection that we had already. There. Just a dab to try and fill the gaps that were created when you disconnected it as a result of pulling it off. And then you can put it back together again. Making sure that all your connections and everything are in the right place, your screw holes in the right place. Starting to think that maybe putting the center screw in first is a better idea. Then you have a pivot point, so I'll do that. There, I'll leave it a little loose. That'll give it some flex and movement leeway while I put the other screws in. I'll put the long screw in next and make sure that that one's in right. That one goes right through into the motherboard, into the bottom. I think it goes right under and into the case, but I'm not sure. It definitely does go deep, so I'm suspecting it goes all the way down into the plastic. So this one I want to be more careful with. If I accidentally screw this one in too quickly, then I risk the possibility of stripping the plastic because these are all tapping screws. There's no like, there. See, and there we go. I got the right, there, on the right place. Now that you have at least two of the screws in, the others should be pretty easy to put in now. Everything pivots around that, so it should be pretty easy to get the other ones in now. And the last screw, and then I can reassemble the case. And then we hopefully are done. So I'll do a quick test before I put the case back on, just to make sure that everything is still working with the shielding down. Because at this point, putting the case on is kind of moot. It's not going to make any difference putting the case on or not putting the case on. The only thing that would make a difference with putting the case on is if you pinned, say, the power button switch somehow, and so it was locked in, like the power button switch was locked on, then there would be no way you could turn it on because it would be stuck in the on position and it wouldn't start. Reminds me of the old saying about manual transmissions. Find it or grind it. Well, wasn't finding it too well there. I got it now, so I can put this down tight. Make sure all your screws are nice and tight. Careful not to short anything on the boards when you're doing this. Remember, the battery is live right now, so anything you touch has power. So try not to touch anything. Here I will try again. See if I can power it up. And boom, there we go. We got Nintendo Power on. Switch alive. Is alive. It's alive. Okay, so, alright, good enough for now. I will power this down. Oh no, there we go. Now we got the power down menu on. Power options, turn off. And I need it off while I'm reassembling the final piece. Just making sure that this control module is nice and tight against the chassis, which is where it's supposed to be. And then connecting this. So in here, you generally want to get your connections at the top first. Like get these all plugged tightly up here, since that's the part that needs to connect and hook in place. And then it pivots over that, if you will. Yeah, like that. It pivots over these corners. And so then once you get that tightly at the top together, then you pivot down around over top of the bottom pieces. And there you go. All in nice and tight. Now, we can test it one more time. Now the buttons are up here now, so now I can test it with the buttons in place. And kaboom. We have power. It is alive. And so now this controller is fixed, but we will need to recalibrate the controller in order to fix the previous calibration that was on the old controller, this garbage piece of controller that was, as you can tell, is severely mangled. This switch was very poorly treated, so this took a huge brunt of the hits, you can see. I'm going to power this back down. And then we will put the rest of the screws in place. Start with the bottom in my case, because I think I ended that way, so... This was not... there's screws on the top, and there's two screws on the top and two screws on the bottom. But one of those two screw holes, as I remember, I just told you, this one here actually does not have a working screw hole behind it. There's nothing to mount on. So if I put a screw in there, it's just going to fall out. So I'm only going to put one screw in this. But normally you would put screws in both of these ports. And yeah, so that's just the way things are for me. I don't have a working screw hole to mount on there, unfortunately, because mine's broken. Try not to put it too tight. I'm I'm going for perfection here. So yeah, where I only have 3 screws to go in here, you would have 4, because there should be 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom. There was actually one of the screws missing because I suspect one of the times it got dropped, that one screw mount probably broke off from inside, and so it was just done right there and then. I'm not even sure the other mount is working, to be honest with you. Alright, so those are tight, and they're in. And how about this one? Is this one tight? See, this one, I think, yeah. I'm not even sure this one's working. Like, it's just rolling around in there. It's almost like, oh wait, I have it backwards. This is the one that actually has a screw screw mount in it. This one's got nothing to mount onto. What was I thinking? It's the wrong thing. So yeah, that one's probably not going to even hold in there. I don't think. Maybe. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I had it backwards. The screw hole I'm trying to put it into, the one that actually has something backing it, is the left one. Just had it a bit backwards because it was the right one when I had it open, but that is because it was upside down. That's so I had it a little backwards in my brain. Yeah, this one is actually the one that actually has something backing it. And I felt that really tightened up there. I was a bit concerned. I was like, well, that's going in circles. There's nothing going on back there. But no, it wasn't that it's that's the broken one. So there's no screw to go in that one. But I will put the rest of the screws in the back now. Now you might think that this is a lot of work to go through for just one controller. Now here's the problem with these Nintendo Switch Lites is that they don't actually have detachable controllers like the classic Switch does. And so there really is no other option except to dismantle this thing if you want to change or fix any of the controllers if they break. You can connect with other controllers using remotely, I think, but not these kinds. So you can't really attempt to do anything special with a Switch Lite. You can't use replacement controllers that are not connected to the Switch. It's kind of an annoying thing, but the only way you can get these controllers fixed is literally by dismantling and reassembling it again. So now the moment of truth, and we have contact. All screws are put back together. This Switch Lite is alive. And now we can go ahead and make changes to it. Volume control is working. That's important. We want to make sure that the controller is working. Oh, it looks like that was working. You can calibrate the control sticks. And so what you do is you tilt the stick that you want to calibrate, and you rotate it all the way around the circle, and it will calibrate. Done. And I had to recalibrate it because the old joystick was so bad that we had to recalibrate it with a broken up. And in the end, it eventually failed. So you can see that right now it's not crazy. It's actually working the way it's supposed to, and it's going around the circle just perfectly. So this controller is perfect and ready to go. So now we are done. I hope you enjoyed disassembling and reassembling the Switch Lite and fixing the controller. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. And please subscribe if you enjoyed any of this video. And don't hesitate to put comments down below. I'm sure that there's better ways that this could have been done. And if that's the case, please give me your suggestions in the comments below. Also, there are many more videos for me to make. I have a Commodore 64 right behind me that needs repair, and many more videos to make on various projects, and even some devices that need to connect to the C64 in order to make it work. For those that are just getting into Commodore 64 scene and want to get involved and want to actually see what it looks like to, create some of these devices, I want to make sure that you have the ability. So thank you for watching and have a great day.